A recent topic of discussion and kind of people trying to pick it apart and figure out what's going on there, and is this a real issue, is it something that's just perceived, was the notion of oversaturation. And this was particularly highlighted in the Dota 2 community from comments by Eternal Envy, a Cloud9 player, and then he happened to mention indirectly the feelings perhaps of an EG player or some of the players in similar teams were likewise, that they play too many tournaments and some of them have lost meaning and the travel's too much, and there's a level of grind involved in it. So maybe there's too many tournaments, maybe there should be less, or this one should be limited in terms of how much online season it has. And this works in Dota 2. I'm going to use that primarily, but it's actually quite a general esports concept. Like I think in StarCraft 2 it would work, CS to a degree, League of Legends not so much because it's a much more limited circuit. But I'm going to use Dota 2 as the model here because I think that this is a game where, crucially, I really like the actual open circuit of Dota 2, that model where the teams have a lot of choice in which tournaments they can attend. Not necessarily directly the player himself there, like if his team tells him to go, maybe he has to go contractually, but I mean the teams have a lot of choice. Like they can choose which ones to go to, and if this isn't working out, they could not attend that if they wanted to, or they could drop out this one for whatever reason. It's not the same as having a set circuit where you have to attend everything, but that's the perfect ground in my opinion, with all the tournaments and all the money and people contributing all this money through the compendiums and all that sort of thing, to be in a world where you can then build from that kind of like perfect base of all the good stuff. You can build something better out of that. It's not like you've got something existing that you're going to have to tear down to put something else there, or it's not like you've got a lack of resources and you can't build something up. And so the model I'm actually going to give for this is the tennis model. It's one of my favorite sports models. So the ATP, the men's tennis tour, basically, for the professional level. What's great about this system is that, I don't know, this wasn't designed this way, but it's just happened to shape out so that it makes tennis one of the most perfect sports for all levels of interest in the sport, so that the person at any level doesn't feel like they're losing out, doesn't feel like they're an idiot who doesn't know what's going on. It keeps everyone in place of like, what's your interest level, right? Here's what you need to watch. Here's when you'll watch it. You'll always know when. Are you going to dip out? Right, come back at this time. That's when the next thing is. And you know what's going on. Then you have the storylines at one level, then they seep into another one if you want more context. Then if you really want more, there's more back there. But you don't need all these things to enjoy it at the most base level. So to anyone who's not familiar with it, in tennis, you have 4 Grand Slams in a year. And the Grand Slam is, I won't say it's a world championship just because in tennis that has such a mixed meaning, especially because we have a number one tournament at the end of the year, basically for the top 8 players in the ranking. But it is worth saying that in the context of esports, the 4 Grand Slams are equivalents to world championships. Like they're the highest level of competition, and they're the ones that count the most for your career. They're the history, they're the prestige factor. They're the one, and you also get a lot of prize money if you win them. Those are the 4 that every single pro player wants to attend and play in, and as a result, that's what every fan wants to watch, in theory at least. If you're just a casual fan of tennis, but you do like pro tennis, the 4 Grand Slams are the ones you have to watch. And so crucially, because there's only 4 of them in a year, and they're always during a set period of time, not exact dates, but the same rough period of time of when the French Open will be. And then we all know that the year ends with the US Open, it starts with the Australian Open at this point, Wimbledon's around here in the middle. Because you know roughly where it is like that, means that if you're a casual fan who does love tennis, but you only like to watch the big Grand Slam, the big spectacle, right, you tune into Wimbledon, you watch that, and you know roughly when the US Open's going to be, so you've got a break off then, you don't have to, you can dip out again, I'm not going to watch for a while, and then you come back for the US Open. Now then, you can have the storylines just of what happened in the majors, because those are the ones affecting the Grand Slams, just affecting people's careers the most. But if you want more context, obviously the guy who's the expert commentator can give you some info, like, oh, between the Wimbledon and the US Open, here's what happened in the tournaments that took place between then. Like, this guy got a lead over him, and then actually he had a good comeback and won a couple of events afterwards, and this guy's coming in hot here. But you don't need to have watched those tournaments. You can still just enjoy the storyline at the top there. And crucially, like I say, it keeps you in place of knowing when to leave, when to come back, what's going on. And even though you might be the most casual guy ever who doesn't follow the sport hardcore, you can get like maximum enjoyment for your level of investment. You don't feel like you're missing anything. Now then, if you like tennis more than that, and crucially, maybe you just like those players and you're like, I love the 4 Grand Slams, but I want more. I want to see more of them. There we go. Tennis has got the system for you. Because after the 4 Grand Slams, there are 9 tournaments called ATP Masters 1000 tournaments. And the whole point of the 1000 is like to do with the points that you can get from these. And so after the Grand Slams, these are the tournaments that give you the most points for your overall ranking in the world, because ranking determines seeding into the Grand Slams and other tournaments, etc. And so these 9 events that take place over the year, spaced out between the Grand Slams overall, in theory, if you're a fully healthy, top-level elite pro player, you are going to attend all 9 of these events, because the idea is you want to win as many points as you can, you want to get your seeding up so that for the next Grand Slam it's good, and you want to get all these factors contribute to it. Like if you're a really godlike player, you could just win the Grand Slams and you have a very high seeding. But you need these other ones also to boost it, because obviously it's very hard to win a Grand Slam and anything can go wrong. And what if you're injured for one where you need to play some others to get... So the idea is, yeah, all the top pros that you want to see are going to try and go to these other 9. Now, admittedly, these are on different surfaces, just like the Grand Slams. So there might every now and then be a player who, in terms of injury or something's wrong, he might skip one of those, but in general they're going to be there. And crucially, because they're going to be there, that means if you're the casual fan, and like I say, you love the Grand Slams, you love those top players, but you just want to see more, right? Well, these tournaments are where you can see more, and you can see them play more times on clay, you can see them play more times on the US Open hard court type surface, especially in the run up to that. So there you go, you've got the extra elite competition. Now you can be watching up to 13 tournaments a year, and it's all the same elite level competition in theory. Now then, if you want to go, and also those are like set, they're in the same locations and roughly in the same order every single year, so again, you know where you are. Now, if you're really, really hardcore and you want even more tennis, there are other ATP Masters tournaments, but with less points, and you go down to those, and what happens with those is there's so many of those, and they're so spread out, and they're so regional, etc., that those are entirely almost at the whim of the players. Maybe one attends this one because it's his hometown tournament, or this is just one that he's gone to when he was a junior and he won it then, so he's always wanted to go there, when he was just breaking the scene. So maybe it's just a favourite, maybe it's on the right court for him, the surface he favours. Whatever the situation might be, some of those will have a couple of the top pros, etc. But none of those will be like stacked like an ATP Masters tournament, and definitely no one's going as hard as they would at a Grand Slam. So the idea is, when you add in those, there's more tennis than you could ever watch. There's really like every single week tournaments going on, so you can't watch that many. Those count a little bit towards ranking, but they're not that vital. The top players could just play the 1000 and the Grand Slams if they really, really want to, and they were elite level. So there's a lot of choice for the viewer and for the player. And there's a hierarchy where everyone knows, depending on their interest level or what type of player they are, where they are within the structure. And it's ideal. It gives great storylines of just the Grand Slam, so what's been going on. The ATP Masters 100. Add in these smaller ones. Oh yeah, we did fail here, but he picked it up at some of these local ones. He was able to get a key victory over a rival at this one, and then he's going into this next tournament. It's all beautifully woven together. Now, I will say there's actually a scene that already has this model, but not by design, which is actually Counter-Strike Global Offensive, where now that there are these majors in Counter-Strike, which are crowd-funded, where the fans buy these cases for money, and then when there's 250,000 a major's held, well, there's been 3 of those over 2014. There's been 4 in total, we're adding Andre McWinter from the year before. So there's one roughly kind of spaced out like the majors, the Grand Slams in tennis, and then you have all the tournaments below that, and then those tend to go, now they've gotten up to sort of like 20k first place for some of them, 15k. That as a result, those are sort of like the ATP Masters 1000 tournaments, and most teams do try to attend those if they can. Then you have the tournaments below that where either they're regional, like just CIS tournaments for the Ukrainians, the Russians, Belarus, whatever, or you have just NA tournaments, or you have a tournament that'll just be in whatever, France or something. You have these tournaments below, and so again, you don't have to watch those if you're not a fan. If you're just the most casual fan, just watch the 4 majors or 3 majors a year. It's going to be enough for you. If you want to watch some more, watch the next ones with the either some prestige, like it's a famous tournament that's gone on and on and on, whatever, Star Ladder or something, or watch a tournament or ESWC. Watch a tournament that's got some good prize money. So Face It had like 20,000 for first place. Just watch a tournament where it's stacked and everyone's trying to go to it. Like Fragbite Masters, everyone wanted to go to the final of that if you could qualify online. So the same factors are all there. But the reason why I mentioned CSGO then, say it does have that, first of all, admittedly, CSGO is very Eurocentric. The majority of the good teams are in Europe, the majority of the organizations are in Europe, the majority of the tournaments in Europe. So it's a lot easier to do it there. And secondly, that's sort of like, not by design, that's just how it's been built up naturally, and that's like where it's at the moment. It actually can't go much further than that at the moment in terms of, unless we get more money involved. And just in general, the scene grows more and there's even space for more tournaments, because that's why I gave the example at the beginning of the good thing about Dota 2 is it's really open. There's all these resources that you can then build this kind of mold all of that into a great scene like this. Whereas CSGO, it's like that's all that's available at the moment. Whereas in League of Legends, like it's all built up in a different way. You'd have to tear some of it down, rip things apart fundamentally, and then try and put the system in. So I think that's a wonderful model, especially because of how it helps ranking and how it helps everyone know where they are. But there are obvious problems with it. And so that aspect's like a food for thought aspect. I hope other people can take that and run with it, and maybe they can come up with a better idea or way to apply it to each of these games than I can. But let's look at some of the problems and kind of talk through them. So first of all, in Dota 2, how would we establish the 3 to 4 majors? Well, I mean, to me, there's three real factors here. There's the prestige. Now, prestige is a tricky word, but I would say prestige is going to come down to two factors which sort of connect and don't in their own way. The first one's like the history. So there's the aspect of like, was it a tournament that's been established and it runs year after year and it's always been one that people want to win, and as a result, if we know who won it last year and it's very contested this year, that's a prestige aspect, which sort of tangentially ties into history of the aspect of like, how long has this event been around? Did it just come around this year? Because if it just came around this year and it has a lot of money, they're still not quite as cool. There's also prestige in the sense of like, everyone knows that this is an event you want to win and you have to win. That's an aspect. There's prize money. Just raw prize money alone will, to a degree, even though I just said that there, it won't be as cool if an event just comes up and it has 400k, but that'll still elevate it the fuck over some event with 100k that maybe has a little bit more established history. That'll help. Prize money will help. That's a way to determine it. And then also, there's just literally what the level of competition there is going to be. Now, the level of competition one's not as big a deal, because even though it might be as big a deal now, if you get the prestige and the prize money ones sorted, the level of competition will go to those two. It won't be a problem. That will take care of the third one. So let's just go with like prestige and prize money. Okay. If we just went off prize money, we look at 2014's circuit. Well, obviously, my first major is going to have to be the International Fort, like $10 million available, and it has the history. That's doing fine on both. But we'll just go with the prize money. It's got the $10 million or whatever, TI4. Now we need 2 or 3 more. This is where we get into some problems, because just on prize money, it's very easy to say the second one. It's going to be World Cyber Arena. I had $472,000 prize put. There we go. There's number 2. That's easy. Number 3, okay, that's a little bit... I can say the Summit 2, 310,000. That's pretty good. Problem then is, now we're getting into events where the fourth one on the list would be like Dream League Season 1 with 265k. But after that, 265k isn't far from some of the other events like 230k, 210k. There's a lot of events between 100 and 200k. So there we go. I can already see some degree of problem there existing, which is that if you're the event that's just below the 265k and I make the cut-off Dream League Season 1, then you're going to be like, what the fuck? I had 247k. Why isn't my event a major? Like, I get it. That does kind of suck, because I could put you still into that model of like, sorry, there's my 4 Grand Slams, and then you can be, hey, listen, mate, you can be a ATP 1000 tournament. That's where the organisational beef's going to come in, where they're going to want to be there. And also, unfortunately, some of these numbers are obviously generated by how much fans put in. So this could all change. That's an aspect where it's not going to be as strict here. That's a problem that we're going to have. Now then, if we went the other way, if we went just off prestige, okay, yeah, we'd have TI4, but would we have World Cyber Arena? It's a very good tournament, but it doesn't really have the history and prestige the same way some of the other tournaments are. Meanwhile, ESL, with their EMS tournaments in the past, they were supporting Dota 2 early on. They've built these big stadium events. I mean, the 2 ESL events, one in Frankfurt, one in New York, they'd probably be in the mix. If it's just going with prestige and tournaments you have to win, well, that's certainly one in the West that we'd consider up there. So you can see how it changes depending on the criteria you're going to use immediately. In terms of the reasons why having these majors are good, just to reiterate back from what I said about the tennis model, you want to have tournaments where the fans know that if I love Dota 2 and I love watching the best teams, but I am not the guy who wants to watch tournaments every week, and I don't want to watch 4 tournaments in a row and get really into it and then get burned out like, oh, there's another tournament next week. If you're that sort of a fan, you don't placate that guy by going, oh, well, he's the most casual fan, let's just destroy and remove other tournaments so that he doesn't have to worry about that. No, you just make it easy for him so he understands. So we'd have these 4 tournaments and you go, right, did you watch TI4? Yep. Well, tune back in later for World Cyber Arena, be in a few months. Oh, okay, cheers. Like that's the better approach. So that the guy who wants to watch in between, he can watch, but he knows that he's watching at a different level. All the teams would go super hard to win our 3 or 4 majors. That's the idea here. We want it to be so that they'd be the focal point. They know that these are the 4 I have to win. Then I can choose the ones I want to win in between, and then the smaller ones. Well, that's fucking up to you at that point, mate. It's up to you and your team as to whether you attend those ones. One of the bigger problems is it goes without saying that the organizations who organize these tournaments are not going to like demean their event by being like, yeah, sure, I know I was close to being a major, but just make me an ATP 1000 type tournament. They're all going to be like, hey, no, my tournament's a world championship. Come and try and win Star Ladder season. It's the best tournament. You know, like obviously they're going to do that. That's just the natural, that's like in their self-interest to do that. So even though I want them to battle to be the big event, this is the right approach. I think that there are ways that organisers themselves can start to set themselves, because that's the problem. I think only the scene in general can shape how this sort of hierarchy would exist. It's not going to come in overnight, but you could gradually shape it. So a way that you could shape it immediately is anyone, I mean, listen, no one's watching this who's a fucking organiser, but if you were and you wanted to be like this, if you already know you have the prize money in terms of like people are going to pump it up enough and you've got enough base level prize money and you maybe have some prestige or some history, so you're in line to be the major sort of tournament, a great way to establish yourself as this major tournament and get yourself in place in this changing landscape is do what the Grand Slams have done in tennis. Establish that your tournament always takes place over this 1 month span, not like literally a month span, but within that month or 30 days span. You can do it before or after, obviously. Establish that it always takes place during that. And then you know what, once you've done it for 2014, you say, listen, next year, 2015, come back here. You don't have to announce the prize money or all that yet. You can do all that later, but it'll be here. And listen, this bit's a bit more open for debate, but I would say even establish the location. If you can, say like, oh, it's always going to be in Shanghai, that's what we're going to do it next year, going to do afterwards. Because by setting things in place like this, you can also get to a place where teams know in advance, right, well, I'd need to be in Shanghai for that time of year, and so I need to have my travel plan like that, so I don't want to burn out in terms of just raw travel to get there. And in terms of other tournaments I'll play to get there, how does it make sense knowing I'll be going to Shanghai and that'll be this, likely be this sort of a prize person, the build up to it, and how are we doing? It helps everyone. It helps put everyone else in place. So yeah, the other tournaments and the other teams aren't going to agree necessarily. Like, yeah, you can be a major, but just by doing it like that, you set everyone else in their place to, like if they're a smaller tournament, and maybe they shift their dates so they're not competing on the other side of the world, like in New York 2 days before, knowing that no one can fly over, that sort of thing will naturally happen. The teams themselves will know which ones they want to attend, and them attending will set your lesser rival or whatever. He'll have to compromise or go somewhere else if he wants to get those teams and players potentially to his event. So the ones who have the most power and leverage really can set in motion some of these aspects, not as strictly as I'd love in my ideal simulation, but to a degree they can. In terms of this is also where Valve can help. And yes, by the way, for anyone who knows that I'm not from Dota 2 and I've only just started, I've watched some games in the past, but I've only started really following the scene and stuff now. Yes, I'm aware of what Valve is like. I come from Counter-Strike, where Valve just ignored us for like 10 years. No, totally. No, there wasn't even a game update, mate. They didn't give a fuck. They never did anything in the scene, never contributed $1 to the fucking scene. I'm aware that Valve don't give a shit. Valve is like the babysitter who isn't watching and they've been on the phone with their boyfriend the whole time and you're just like jamming a fork into the socket. Like, I'm aware of what Valve is like. So when I say stuff like, hey, wouldn't it be great if Valve helped out like this? And you're like, this stupid motherfucker doesn't know Valve. Yeah, I do. I'm just saying that hypothetically, in a world where a developer was interested, this is what they might be able to do to help with this problem. And then maybe we can talk about that after. So the way Valve could help is they themselves could come in and to a degree help design what the majors are. Now, you don't have to be strict riot style and be like, these are the 4 majors. And you know what? Anyone else, you can't have a major. You can't even say you're a major. And don't do that. In fact, I'm going to limit you and you can't have this date. I don't want to go like Valve Riot Blizzard style like that. Instead, Valve could literally do it in terms of, if they want to just do something like classic Valve style where you don't have to do any effort, you could just literally look at these tournaments like this and go like, okay, these 4 events, so mine was like TI4, World Cyber Arena, Summit 2, Dream League, these get like, whatever the fuck lame term they'd use, like legendary status as tournaments, like whatever that would be. And that would be the equivalent of the major in Dota 2. One of the things that would really help about doing this is another way Valve could do it, and this will sound so naive, but like I said, I know what the fuck this world's like. This is in a perfect world where Valve are awesome and they want to be involved in the community and there's the liaisons. They could help design the TI invites so that they either gave direct points for winning these 4 majors. Obviously one of them couldn't be TI4. I understand that, son. But for the other ones, these ones get you more points that build towards your TI invite. Or they just outright say, listen, we're going to weight those more. So actually, if you do win one of those, it's almost certain you are. If you come second, you've got a way better chance of an invite. That alone will help a lot of these teams and players in terms of knowing when to build up to go to those majors and all the rest of it. In terms of the majors, I had another idea that these majors could do, but this one's a little bit more tricky, but I'll throw it in there anyway. The ones who have set themselves as majors, or it's their goal to be, and they've got these things in place, a way that they could actually add a bit of cachet is they themselves unofficially could use the tournaments before theirs, either other majors. They could each say to each other and have a partnership and say, listen, I'm going to give my rankings and my seedings for where people get into the tournament, what invites I give to my tournament, or placings, etc. A simple way would be if these majors all got together, 2 or 3 of them, and said, like, you know what, if you place top 4 TI4 or the Summit 4-2, then you know what, you automatically get invited to World Cyber Arena, whatever the case might be, like, or you get like top 4 seeding in Cyber Arena. And in terms of events beforehand, like, I'll give you lesser points, but you can be like in the run up to my event that helps people qualify. Now that's the reason why I say maybe give the other major winners like points, because it might actually be like counterintuitive or counterproductive rather, if we're trying to help teams to not have to attend every event, but then if you do all these events beforehand, you get invited into the major easier. I don't want to make that too strict, because again, I might be forcing people to play more events, but in a theoretical world there, if we lived in an even more perfect world, not just one where Valve like talked and listened and all that sort of good stuff, but if we lived in a totally perfect world, a computer simulation of Thorin, where I could design all these things from step 1, step 2, all the way, and everyone just did what I said, then you could just take a city planning approach even, and you could apply all these factors to the extent that these 4 majors are always in these locations, and then the next sets of tournaments, we're even going to build the run-up of when they are, so that like the first major is in NA, and so the first couple of tournaments are the NA tournaments, and they build up the circuit into NA, so that we travel to NA, we play in this region, and we play that tournament, and then the next tournament is in Europe, and we have that one, and we have the single run into there. And there'll still be other tournaments dotted around if they want to be, but this will help people know that they attend these ones, and if I'm attending these 3, I can skip the one in the middle if I've got some sort of issues or burnout, but I can still go to this one, and I'm still within the region, and there's a lot more choice in that sense. And we go to China next, and whatever it would be, there would still be other tournaments, but in a city planner sort of way, you might want to make the circuit even regionalized like that, so that you get all the structure of where the Grand Slam major type, ATP Masters 1000 type, the lower levels, even lower than that, like a small one nearby. I think in general, this sort of approach, like I've said, puts everyone in place. The casual guy, the one who gets a bit more in, the hardcore guy, helps with the players. The best player, maybe, yes, he's definitely going to play all the majors, all the 1000 level ones, and then he can pick and choose the next ones. Or if he's in a slump, then yeah, if he's a lesser player, yeah, he can play all those small ones. Maybe that's a way to get into the next ones up. And crucially, when you have this structure like this, it's going to free up some of those smaller ones, so that a guy who's in like the 15th best Western team can actually play in that tournament, and maybe he scores a win off the one good team that does go to that one, and then he gets into this next thing. By using some of those points, he can qualify for like one of the wildcard spots to get into this big one over here. Whatever the system is, I think this sort of hierarchy, but crucially in Dota, you have a chance to do it in a free-form manner. It's not going to be restrictive, some like totalitarian developer comes down like, I made the game, I will say what happens here, I know what esports is. Like, no, everyone gets to have a say in this. Tournaments can have an aspect in it. Valve can have yeah, okay, mate. You can also have like teams can choose by, if they all go to these events that they think are good, and then maybe there's one that has slightly more money, but they think this one's a better event to go to, by all supporting that one and going to it and going hard at it, they're going to help create the prestige of making that a major to a degree, in terms of just like which has the best competition field. Lastly, fans will then know what to do. Like, once you have these majors in place, fans now know, yeah, before, I love the circuit where they can choose which tournaments to support, but now they also can sort of choose like, okay, this is a big major, I'm definitely going to put my money into that one, and now I like this one as well, so I'm going to put some money in there to get it at this level, and now this small one, if it's regional to me, if it's local to me, yeah, I'll put something in. If not, maybe I don't care about it. These things will all fall into place and have like a natural order to them. So I think that's a good concept, and it applies beyond Dota 2, but I thought Dota 2 was the model to use in terms of what's there, what can be fermented into something more.